Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours. And nice to be here for you again today. As always, we gather daily, 7 days a week, to answer production questions and to do our best to help everybody kind of solve things around production, digital, online presence, the use of cameras and lighting and all the rest of this stuff. Anything that has to do with getting your signal out across the interwebs to people like we're doing right now. So that's why we come together. For those of you who have been around, this show is driven by your questions and the voting on your questions. So if you have any questions about media creation, distribution, stuff like that, simple rules: put in one question per submission, and remember, somebody's going to be reading it aloud. And when that happens, that's Alexander today. You want to make sure that it's constructed simply as clearly as you can, and then one question per entry. And everyone who's under the Mukana system in the back end can vote on the questions. You can vote them up or down, and the questions that get the most votes get prioritized. We talk about them quicker and with more depth. So that's kind of the process of that. If you'd like to submit a quick question, I just tossed up the QR code. That QR code, you can use your phone or any other device that reads QR codes to get into the queue. They go into the back end. The back end kind of vets them to make sure it's not a teenager messing with us. And then they go in. So it's possible to get your question in even in real time or close to real time. So if you need to use that, go ahead. All right, those are all the rules. That's kind of how it happens. We've all been through this before. And now it's time to actually start the show. Alexander, what's our first question today?
First question is from Douglas Carmichael. I was so impressed by this segment of the Paralympics opening ceremony where the rowing team was rowing through virtual water. Would it most likely be projection mapped or an LED floor? I didn't see visible panels, and it was a white surface.
I unfortunately did not see that, and it sounds just stunning. And I will say that the ability to use virtual backgrounds and have people interact with them has been something that I have been very impressed with. I don't know if any of you watched our coverage from the big shows like NAB and Cinegear, but we kept seeing, I was on the show floor at Cinegear, and the number of virtual production devices working, particularly things like large-scale cranes working in conjunction with a virtual scene, just blew me away. I had a little bit of video that I rolled of somebody, and the setup was like climbing a mountain. And through using the motion control camera, they were able to do both a shot of the young woman who was fake climbing, and she was actually parallel to the floor and doing it this way, but the camera moved over such that she looked like she was hanging on the wall of a cliff. And then instantly it came to a wide shot of her, totally different perspective. And I remember just going, wow, that would have taken huge amounts of money and helicopters and stuff. And they did it in 10 seconds, 15 seconds to make the entire change shot to shot. And so I'm a pretty big believer that whether it was some sort of projector or whether it was a live action floor, some of which we also saw at NAB, there's almost nothing that somebody who understands this technology can't pull off in terms of shots. Douglas, I'm sorry that I didn't see that, and we didn't have time this morning to pull it up, but maybe when Alex comes back later today, if you want to put in a similar question a little later, maybe he knows more about that kind of shot. Maybe he'll even have time. I mean, he's been really busy because of the big show yesterday with the Verve Pipe. But I find this fascinating. I'd love for you to bring it back and talk to us, ask more, and maybe we can break it down for you more closely. Let's go to the next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Is the Tula a serious mic and field recorder, or is it just a novelty item?
Jesse Kester, what do you think?
Well, before I answer the question, I would like to take a quick look at the Tula mic. This is what it looks like. And this company Tula was started by an engineer who founded Soyuz. So the team behind these microphones are no strangers to very high quality, very expensive microphones. I have not used one in the field. I haven't recorded with one. The demo that they have on the website is about as strange as a demo can be for a microphone. I'm not sure if I'll be able to find it. It was just a gentleman playing bongos out in the desert with it seemed like a lot of post-processing and noise cancellation added in post-production, which seemed like a strange choice for a way to demo. a microphone. But I will say that just because something is beautiful does not mean it is just a novelty item. And I really do appreciate when companies go the extra mile on the design side of things, on the visual design, not just the technical design side of things.
Alexander Knight?
Yeah, I can't comment on the quality because I haven't tested it. But at that price point, I would much rather have a product from a company that I know and trust. And at that price point too, something like a Shure MV7 Plus, which is the new model. It's a end address dynamic microphone, and that is a hybrid microphone, so you get both XLR and USB. And if you use it over USB, it has excellent noise cancellation and other dynamics processing available on it. So if you're in a noisy room, a dynamic microphone is really good, and the processing on the MV7 Plus model is excellent.
And Courtney?
Well, I haven't used this microphone, so I can't bear witness to its sound. If you look at its features and industrial design, it's designed to look kind of like an old 1950s shaver, and it sits on a table. Although it does have a 1/4-inch hole here on the folding handle here, so that you can mount it on a mic stand. It also is dual pattern. It's cardioid and omni, I think, so that you can put it between two people, supposedly. And it has it's USB-C connection for power and or going into a workstation. It also has a built-in recorder. I wouldn't necessarily trust it as the only recorder out there because, you don't have any means of monitoring your media. I don't even know if you can even play back. Maybe you can. But there's no LCD display on it or anything to tell you to go through menus to select your recording format or your select files or your file names, anything like that. I think it's just push a button and it records a WAV file or maybe an MP3 file. So it does say it has built-in noise reduction. I kind of worry about that. A microphone with built-in noise reduction can be questionable, especially, hopefully you can monitor it through its little headphone jack and hear what your noise reduction is doing. So interesting industrial design. Quality for the price, I'm skeptical. It's probably an Electret condenser. It's inside there.
Hope that helps you, Paul. Let's go to our next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. Looking at upgrading to an Earthworks mic for Zoom and similar apps, would the ETHOS be better at rejecting outside noise than the Icon Pro? I live in an apartment, so that is important.
Okay. Alexander Knight's going to help you out. Alexander?
I can't say for certain if they use the same capsule. They may share the same capsule. They also are very similar in price point. It looks like there's only a $100 difference. Just quickly looking at the specs, they have the same level of the specs are very similar, including the self noise, but they have different polar patterns. So it looks like the Icon Pro is a cardioid, and then the ETHOS is a super cardioid. Both same, similar end address microphones. So they could vary. I mean, Earthwork mics in general are very, very high quality. I've heard samples. I think I heard somebody with the Icon or the ETHOS, and I thought it sounded very, very good. As far as off-axis rejection, even two microphones with the same polar pattern are not going to be exactly the same as far as off-axis rejection. You won't know until you really test it. But I would say give one of those a try, whatever fits your budget. Just remember that cardioid, the null point, which is 180 degrees off axis from the capsule at the back, has the most rejection. So if you're in an environment where maybe you're in front of a big bay window and you got a highway there and there's lots of noise, if your desk is facing where the noise is, you probably want a cardioid microphone. Super cardioid, there's a bit of a bulb there at the back, so you get a little bit more noise coming through, but you get really good off-axis rejection on the sides of the microphones. Again, you got to pick the right tool for the right job, so that's something to think about.
Chris Fenwick.
I got to hand it to, I can't imagine sitting around in a Denny's booth with a bunch of friends in 2024 and saying, hey, I got a great business idea. Let's invent a new microphone. I don't understand. I'm surprised people still think that there's more microphones that need to be invented and marketed. Don't we have enough already? That's my comment.
Listen, I've known a few people who the idea of there are enough microphones in my collection would make them shake and shimmy and maybe shut down. There's always a new microphone for them. Let's go to the next question.
Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana is asking, what is your go-to for long runtime UPS for non-power over Ethernet PTZ or other critical equipment for studio installation?
Courtney Gooden, what do you think?
Well, most UPSs, I'm using a CyberPower right now, 1500 watt UPS. Most battery backups or UPSs are not designed for long-term use, like over an hour. Most of them will power your equipment, depending on what the load is on them, for 30 minutes. They're enough to get you through a brief power outage or to be able to shut down all of your equipment gracefully without losing any files, etc. While it switches you over to battery power. I have taken CyberPower portable power supplies that have the internal lead acid battery in them, the 12 volt 7 amp batteries, and I've brought the connectors out from that 12 volt 7 amp battery and hooked them up to a car battery if I needed to run longer on it, or have a UPS that could continuously run for a couple of hours on all my equipment. So that's what I've had to do, but most of the ones off the shelf are not designed for long-term run times. So look at the wattage, the 1500, is a good, depends on how much load you're going to put on it and how long it'll run. 1500 watt hours will run 1500 watts for 1 hour. So if you're going to be running a lot of cameras or any lights or something off of it, try and minimize the amount of load on it, give you a longer runtime.
Next question.
Larry Engelhart from Chicago is asking, doing an event with HDMI script signal to 5 teleprompters, 3 HDTVs, and 2 presidential types, where the HDMI needs horizontal flip. Flip can be done in OBS. Can Yolo or Atem do it? Other suggestions? Thanks.
And Alex is on the panel. Alex, what do you think?
Hey, buddy. Sorry. I came back from the event last night, and I realized that my camera I didn't even know where it was. Like, as we used it for the shoot, we used it for a part of the shoot. We were doing this thing with the Verve Pipe last night, and I was like, I'm going to go find the camera. So it's not quite, the color isn't quite right because I couldn't quite figure out, like, we had reset it to match 2 other Sonys. And anyway, it's a long story. So sorry about that.
I kind of figured it was something like that. I knew you were kind of looking for stuff.
Rigging, it's fine spending all day rigging a venue that wasn't designed to do what you did. It's not. Then it takes a little time to unrig it and try to leave it like you didn't touch it. So anyway, that was anyway.
Splitting
I think
HDMI to teleprompters. Man.
I don't know whether it's splitting it or the flip. And Courtney will probably say something. We use decimators at the monitors for flipping. So decimators are the easiest thing to just put on the back of it. You can't. I don't think you can flip it with Atem. I haven't used a Yolo since I first tested it for about an hour, and made a decision that it wasn't probably my cup of tea. As you start to get to lots of these, I'm not sure that OBS would be part of my pipeline. It's good. It's a good streaming app. Starting to use it for signal flow for things on the ground, probably out of its spec, and so you probably might want to think about that process.
Well, we're next going to the man who has a golden statue over his shoulder that has to do with teleprompting itself. So, Courtney, help us out.
Yeah, she's holding up a little teleprompter back there. No, like Alex said, the MDHX will do it for $300. And the other nice thing about the MDHX, not only does it convert from HDMI in to HDMI out, and it can flip horizontal or vertical inside there. It also has multiple SDI outputs that can be used as kind of a distribution amplifier. So not only can you flip that image, but you could send it out over SDI to multiple monitors flipped. So you could send 2 of those to the ones that need it flipped and bypass it for the others that don't need it flipped. That's the problem with using OBS to flip your image, because if you flip it in a computer software program like OBS, that video output out of your computer is going to always be flipped. So if you need some that are going to be read straight that aren't in mirrors and some that are going to be in mirrors, Some of them have to be flipped and some of them don't have to be flipped. So if your monitors don't have the ability to reverse in the monitor, then you're going to need something that's outside the computer and outside the monitor to flip it. And the MDHX can do it the cheapest. Or also the MD Cross does it as well. MD Cross is a little more expensive, but it has built-in test signal generators, which is handy to have. So either one of those decimators can do it.
So would you normally decide which way to go depending on how many need to be right side up and how many need to be flipped? And just send that out as the base signal and then flip the ones at the monitor that don't.
On all of our teleprompting systems, they just send out an unflipped image, and all of our monitors have the ability to flip in the monitor.
There you go.
So you can make that decision on a monitor-by-monitor basis, because sometimes we have direct view monitors just on a stand that aren't with a beam splitter on them, and sometimes the signal will feed out of the same DA. The same signal will feed one that's in front of a camera lens, and it will have to be flipped. So it's usually flipped in the monitor. And you can use the MDHXs at the monitor itself, or you can use it as a distribution amplifier if you've got some SDI monitors out there, so that you can send multiple images so you don't have to go through a second DA after you flip it.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California is asking, for capturing video testimonials, is there any quality differences between solutions like Riverside and Descript's SquadCast?
I think you're talking probably about audio here, since Riverside is an audio broadcaster. Alex, what do you think?
I think that Riverside's probably better than SquadCast. I've talked to people who use it day in, day out. I've been on shows with SquadCast. And for video, for audio, it's been fine. So I just want to say that I don't know but Riverside is designed to do video as well. We tried to push SquadCast pretty hard and try to build, get more feeds out of it, and it very quickly crashed. So so it was, and we think that it just put too much pressure on the reflector for what we were doing, because we were asking for high res frame, from multiple people live. And so I don't know I don't have enough experience with Riverside. What I do know is that everybody that I talked to, I haven't talked to Chris about this, so he may disagree, has said if Zoom had a double ending option, they would drop both of these in 10 seconds. There's no commitment to the idea that they could just have something that everybody already has on their computer and they turn it on and it starts to record. No one is excited about the apps that I've talked to. They're just using them because those are the only ones that do double ending.
Chris Fenwick, what do you think?
Well, yes, maybe, Alex. We still have the problem with the fact that there are companies, multiple companies that we work with won't install Zoom on their machines. We call it app forbidden. Can't use that. And that is the political side of, the success story of any platform. I've been saying this for a long time, that you can be, Apple proved it. You can be the better product, in my opinion. Courtney, apologize. But if you don't deal with the IT people and the people writing the checks, they'll never buy your product. And Zoom still has to do that. In terms of Riverside versus Descript, SquadCast, it took me a long time to find the SquadCast product. There's other things named SquadCast, so it's difficult to just find it, and it's not obvious on the Descript website. So I didn't even know that existed. That's a problem. We use Riverside all the time now. I took down my Zoom recording system. It's done. We use Riverside all the time. Actually, the Zoom recorder is now in my truck. That computer, truck Mac, and Riverside has issues too. One of the most interesting one is the not consistent, not horrible, but not consistent download speeds. I've had multiple recordings where I end up sitting around awkwardly for 2 hours while somebody's file is uploading to me. And sometimes it's just therein, but sometimes it was like, well, it was fine yesterday, and then today it's a 2 hour download. So it's not without It's potential headaches, but it works.
Let's go to our next question. Thank you, Chris.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, Alex, you mentioned yesterday that you wouldn't use a Chinese origin brand when security is paramount with most, if not all, tech manufacturing in Asia these days. Wouldn't that be casting too wide a net?
And Jesse Kester has a thought. I know it was addressed to Alex, but he hadn't raised his hand yet, and I want to make sure I don't stay out of his wheelhouse in case he's working on getting another demo or something ready. So, Jesse, what do you got?
Well, there's a big difference between a brand that originates from China and a brand that does a lot of their manufacturing in China. So there are plenty of companies in other countries that are beholden to other rules and regulations that happen to do their manufacturing in China. And I think the implication is that those companies that are beholden to those more strict rules, that might be found in Australia, Europe, or America, or Canada, those would be safer than a company that is beholden, that is of Chinese origin and Chinese manufacturing and only paying attention to Chinese rules and regulations and interests.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, Chinese-owned companies, I think that, and I didn't say for everything, and by a lot of things that are made by Chinese-owned companies, I think we were talking specifically about networking. So putting in things that are, into your networking, if you, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy them either. I'm saying that if you think you're going to be passing stuff that you might want to worry about, you might want to think about those. It does feel like, we think that China is pretty focused on getting communications out of the United States, and they look at the hardware as a leverage point. So that's why a variety of companies in China have been constricted because we didn't do that for politics. Like that's a really painful thing to do on a couple different levels. And so if the United States is doing it, in this case, they wouldn't have created such a stink if they didn't think that there was a problem. And so I think that's the issue there.
Paul Wallace. Oh, I'm sorry. Next question.
Paul Wallace from Austin, Texas is asking, how would you use AI and what tools would you use to analyze the video, audio, transcript, and chat stream of a YouTube video?
Courtney, do you have some thoughts?
Well, once you have it captured, I don't know about AI tools that analyze it on the fly or analyze it while it's in the cloud on YouTube itself. But I have used AI. The tools I've used AI for is generating code. That's very handy for doing that. If you can't figure out how to do something in a variety of different code bases, it can write test code for you, and you can take a look at it and see how it either incorporate it or change it a little bit. It comes in quite handy for that. It's also great for doing summarizations. If you've got a long document, and you just say, give me the high points, give me a list of the high points of this document. It'll go through and analyze that, 20-page document. There's a limit to currently on most of the chat bots and to how much you can put in as the scope that it looks over, that you can cut and paste. Or some of them, I think, I can't remember which one, has the ability to use Google Drive and use documents stored in a folder on Google Drive, so it can use all of those, take all of the content of the folder on a drive. But that's fairly rare. Usually it just allows you to paste text into the chat window and then have it analyze that text that you pasted in, and a lot of times it limits it to just a few megabytes of text that you can paste in. But it's great for doing that kind of stuff. Also on the Android phones, those of us that have AI now and don't have to wait till next year, have the ability to erase things and recompose photos, use generative fill to remove things from photos, move things around. You can move somebody from the foreground over here to the foreground over there. And it works on most Android phones right now with Google Photos app, so that's very handy, and that's what I use it for. Audio, I haven't used it very much for yet.
Ready for our next question.
Next question is from Chris Widener in Indianapolis, Indiana. Has anyone seen the reports of AI note-taking apps from participants to bypass Zoom waiting rooms, automatically join a meeting, and overtake the recording?
I have not seen reports of those. That is an interesting and slightly concerning thing, I would imagine. So it's taking over the meeting and automatically taking over the recording. That would not be a pleasant experience, I don't think. Chris, if you can pop in and let us know where any of those reports might be. I would imagine that somebody in our community might be interested in taking a look at them. We don't know at this point. There's so many people trying to figure out how to do interesting things, shall we say, on the internet. That sounds like it would be a security vulnerability, but I'm not particularly smart about those kind of things, so I'll leave it for others. But interesting, and thank you for bringing it up today, and we'll think about it a little bit and try to dive into it more later. Next question.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York is asking, looking to buy a Mac Mini for live streaming events. What hardware software should I purchase with it?
Jesse Kester has an idea. Jesse?
Well, I know you're getting the Mac Mini for the streaming, but the first thing I would get is an Atem of some size or another and do the streaming from the board and use the Mini as a monitor computer to do all the back-end execution and offload the compression and broadcast to a dedicated device.
There you go. Alex?
Yeah, I have some confidence issues in the streaming, the black levels of the streaming directly from all the Blackmagic hardware. So I think that they have a chip issue, and I think that it's useful, but I think for production, we found, and we thought it was just the UVC when it streamed to, when we connect it to a computer. But we found in early days when we moved to Michigan that we were using an Atem to do the actual streaming, and we saw the black level issue as well. And so as a result, that pretty much ended our use of Blackmagic's encoders, and we also don't use the H.264 captures in the extreme ISOs. So we, like that very quickly ended because we just felt like that they're, and I don't think that they can fix it. I mean, I think that a new version of the hardware will fix it someday, but I don't think that the current ones can do it at the level that, at least that I need to do it at. So I think that it can be serviceable for a lot of things that you're doing, but I love Blackmagic and I have lots of their hardware, but I think that in this one place, I think that I would, for at least the productions I work on, we can't use that compressor. So as a result, I do agree with Jesse that we should do, having a switcher in front of it makes a lot of sense. If you're looking at encoding, you might want to think about a Sonnet box with a card in it, so a quad card or a duo card. That's going to let you bring SDI signals in if you need those. And so that would help a lot in that area. And then it's just a matter of figuring out how you're going to mix things. I will still lean. I do a fair bit of shows now with all software, but when I'm put under a lot of pressure, I tend to go back to hardware. So finding what you're going to do is hardware mixer or hardware switching.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, don't buy that Mac Mini for a couple of weeks at least, because new ones are coming out a week from Monday.
Do we think that they're going to? That's usually not part of the iPhone announcement. It's usually
I don't know.
later.
It's been rumored. Everybody's rumored it's going to be announced, but
usually
maybe
they won't.
they'll wait till September.
Right.
It is September. Sorry, September 9th.
That's usually a watch and phone event, but it could be different.
Well, there's rumors there's all kinds of rumors, and there's even mock-ups and everything out there leaked. So I assume it's on its way at M4, and we won't know until that M4 comes out what its specs are, the number of ports that it's going to have, whether it's going to do hardware-based. I think it will do hardware-based encode and decode of HEVC and H.264 and AVC and a number of other AV1 and another of other codecs will be hardware accelerated, I think, in the new Mac Mini. So I'd wait till we see all the actual real specs on that thing and see the ports on it before you decide what hardware or software you should purchase, because that'll make a difference for streaming, if you're going to use hardware encoding in it. And if the software supports the M4 natively to do that encoding, will make a big difference.
Alexander Knight.
Yeah, I think Alex's comments about the black levels, I mean, that's perfectly valid if you're doing events at a certain level of production like he does. It just depends. Like for me, for podcasts, and I imagine for probably a lot of smaller corporate things, it's good enough, the live stream. Like I think it looks pretty good. Could it be better? Absolutely. And I would like to see Blackmagic address that. So yeah, if you care about that kind of stuff, like if you're not going to, to me, I don't really see the point in buying an Atem ISO Extreme, for example. If you're not going to use the streaming and you're not going to use the ISO recording, you should just step up to a better quality switcher. I would look at the Roland line of streaming switchers like the V160 HD, which has not only HDMI, but it also has SDI as well. It doesn't have those issues with black levels. Even just the webcam out is YUY2, fully uncompressed video quality. The overall hardware, it's much better build. It is a lot more money too, but you also get what you pay for. So you got to really think about like what level of production you're really doing, and weigh in all those things on whether or not the Atem's really an appropriate piece of hardware for the type of stuff that you're doing. And of course, there's other solutions too, like great software-based solutions as well, like Mimo Live on the higher end, and of course Ecamm for simpler productions as well. So there's a lot of options there.
Alex, you wanted to come back in on this?
Yeah, I also want to just clarify. I consider as a hardware switcher, I don't think that there is a competitor that I would choose under $10,000. I think that Blackmagic owns that space, and so while I say, I might not encode from it, I wouldn't buy a switcher under $10,000 that wasn't a Blackmagic piece of hardware. I think that they have created something from $300 to $10,000 with a unified interface that allows you to move from one to the next. I think their software interface makes it incredibly competitive, and I play with a lot of the other switchers, and I look at them at expos and stuff like that, and none of them have had me go, I should get this instead. so I just wanted to clarify that I don't think the switcher's that bad. I think that it's just one little bit that I probably wouldn't use at this point.
And I note, following the conversation in Mukana, that Mickey said, I wouldn't put a business on hold just because a new computer will be announced or a new piece of, there will always be new stuff coming out. And it just triggered in my mind, I had to buy a new laptop because I had a huge conference and I needed it to run things at the conference. And I knew we were long in the tooth. And sure enough, 2 weeks after the conference was wrapped and we did it, Apple came out with new laptops. And I felt bad for a while. I should have waited. But if you wait, I wouldn't have had it for the job, and the job pretty much paid for the computer. So at some point, you have to pull the trigger, and I'm always a little leery about saying, if I just don't buy this one, the next one will be even better.
And I will say the most purchasable Mac Mini, the most purchasable Mac at any given time is a Mac Mini. And the reason is that you will use that for something for years. I have a Mac Mini sitting here that I've had for 12 years, still working. So it's, you don't, there is going to be a form factor change. I think it's going to probably be an end of October, early November. That typically is where the Mac Minis and the computers will come out. The rumor is, I think that there's a 50-50 chance that they're going to replace the Apple TV with the small Mac Mini. So I think that I believe that they're going to, the small puck version, they're just going to, you can put it into Apple TV mode, or you can put it back into Mac OS mode and probably jump back and forth between them, turning every monitor, every TV into a computer, right? And so I think that if they don't do that, I think it's crazy, because if they're going to make a small one, just get rid of the Apple TV, leave the interface, like you can go into that mode, but just make it a computer and get the price point down to $299 or something like that and call it a day. But I think that I buy Mac Minis and I don't think about when they're going to release. If I need another Mac Mini, I just buy it. I have a lot of them that are just the M1 8 gigs. I've got a Pro that's got 16 gigs. I've got, and I just keep using them, and I use them all the time. And so they're probably some of the best purchases out there for the Mac.
Yeah, I do think FOMO is not just about cameras and hardware like that, but it's also about computers. If you just say, I'm going to miss out if I buy it now, you're never going to buy it, and you're going to end up with 8 models, old stuff, still waiting for the perfect one to come, and it never has worked for me. Courtney, you had a last thought before we
Yeah, I did check with Gurman, and Alex is right. It's probably suggested to be between October and November, and unless some things go wrong, and then it could be pushed to the beginning of next year. But this is the first, the reason the Mac Mini is so ubiquitous at Alex's house is because the design hasn't changed in about 6 years. So a 6-year-old Mac Mini fits in the same spot, has basically the same performance, as long as it's an M1 or later, than the current one. So maybe buy a used one if you need one for business to hold you over, and then take a look at the new ones when they come out in a couple of months and see if it improves it enough to jump on a second one.
And just a gentle reminder, your votes do always count here at Office Hours. So even if you didn't get in early, you can still vote on things if you're in the Mukana back end. And we do get to those more quickly. And I think we have enough questions. Not enough. You're always encouraged to continue to put questions in, because maybe you'll put in that one question that really excites the audience. They'll vote it up and we'll get to it immediately. But your votes do count. And particularly since it looks like as many days here, we're going to push back some questions at the end back into your notes. The votes count a lot, so do be active about that. And next question.
Greg Kadoki in Toronto is asking, Alex, can you talk through the signal path and gear for last night's the Verve Pipe spatial stream?
Alex, we've been looking forward to hearing your report on how everything went last night. Can you tell everybody what happened again and how it went?
So we were planning to go to the record plant. That didn't work out for a variety of reasons. And so we had to kind of shift at the last minute to find another place. And so we called Sweetwater. Sweetwater in Mill Valley it's not the company that sells you hardware, although they should partner with them anyway. But Sweetwater is it is a great venue in Mill Valley. So I've only walked through it a couple times for some other things that didn't turn out, that we didn't end up doing production, but just a really, really great one. And they do tons of streaming already. So they've got they've got a good internet connection. They've got a great space. They've got great green rooms, which is really important. And they've even got a whole production studio area that is designed just for streaming. So they really, they're more forward thinking than most venues that we're in. And so we got really excited about working with them, but we only had a couple days. And so I want to, it was a fast turn. So, I want to thank Max on our team, who's been on many of our shows, as helping out, as well as Michael Coleman. Michael Coleman, he's been on our show, I think, as a guest, and so he came in with some Sony cameras, and I came in with my iPhone and my camera. That's why my camera's all kind of everywhere, because we use that as well. What the goal became, we were going to do a big multicam shoot, which when we moved the date and the space and the time, we lost a lot of our team. So we were like, okay, well, what can we do here? Because we really wanted to, and what I really wanted to test, the idea of doing a multicam was really to do something for everyone that doesn't have an Apple Vision Pro. But what I really wanted to test was the Apple Vision Pro. So we backed into doing an Apple Vision Pro activation. We did record some stuff that's going to go up later as an interview edit. We used Mukana so that people could ask questions or commend us. So they were able to, if you went to asktvp.live, you could ask questions. And so we had a lot of questions coming in for the live stream. We had I think it was 700 or more, or somewhere in the roughly 700 viewers. Anyway, so we shot it with the phone, and I'll show you what that looks like here. This was the kind of the behind the scenes of the shoot. It's pretty simple. The laptop there is actually just to manage the questions. It wasn't open to the questions right then, but that's just there to manage questions there. So the main work was done. We took the individual feeds from I'll show you in a second, this interview in the green room. We took the feeds. We mic'd the band and and all the instruments. Brought them into my Scorpio, and then we fed the Scorpio out of the Scorpio into a USB pre 2. And the reason for that is we're having a lot of problems with the iPhone in all apps, not just Vision, not just the Stream Voodoo app, but all the apps are not. They're not for some reason, connecting to complex USB interfaces. So a Mix Pre 3, the Scorpio, other things, we're not getting that connection isn't reliable. The USB Pre 2, which is, 15 years old, all the controls on it are dip switches. It shows up as a dumb 2-in, 2-out interface, and it just works. So we used two of those, one here and one in the venue. And so fortunately I had a couple. So let's go to the next thing here. This is me mounting it up here. So this is what we did is when we did the walkthrough, we found that there was a lighting rig that was in a pretty good position for us to jump into it. A little high, but what we did here, and I don't know if I have a great picture of it, but we clamped a magic arm to here with a Mayfer, and then we dropped it down and we attached it to the same rig that we had in the room, because I had to move that. I only had one phone, so I had to move that rig from one to the other. No, I got a couple other close-ups of that I'll show you in a second. And then we also mounted power and a Mix Pre 3 up there. In the future, there's some other ways we might do that, but that's the way we had it set up for this one. So again, we had a couple days and we were kind of grabbing what we had available without purchasing a ton of things, which I'm prone to. Never against it. We ran all the cabling back here and through here. So we ran audio out of there's a Constellation box here, or Myers box here. And then there's internet around there. So it was a pretty straight shot for us to mount all that up there. And then let's see here. So this is what it looked like in the rig. So this is the streaming app. This is the Stream Voodoo streaming app. This is the camera app. Right now, if you go up to streamvoodoo.com/spatial, you can download the viewer app for the Apple Vision Pro, but it's doing left eye and right eye, or that backwards. But yeah, all you have to do is hit start streaming and it goes. Now it looks for that audio, so we were able to get the audio from I believe the board was an SSL. So he just dumped us left and right, which we ran up and ran into this. So we were getting production audio out of that. This is kind of the view. It's not exactly the view of what the angle, but you can see our rig here, and the Mix Pre is over here somewhere, hidden in there. But this was kind of the shot of the band, and this turned out to be a really great frame. It was a great, and one of the reasons that we used the Verve Pipe was A, that they were interested in it, but B, that they're incredibly good live. Like just it's an incredibly tight band to play against. And I felt like all this effort isn't worth it if people are still hacking around. So this is what the rig looks like a little bit closer. So we got internet coming into here. This was the USB Pre. And by the way, one little thing, that old USB Pre still takes the square USB module. So I had to find USB-C to USB-B, which is not you have to order it. so anyway, and then of course we can deliver power to this as well. So we had power, internet, and audio into it. And then all I had to do to move this rig, you'll see a NATO mount here at the top. So what I did is I had the tripod mount on the bottom. We just pull these out and just pull this off, and then I just used the NATO mount to attach it to the other rig. So we had only a couple minutes because we finished the interview in the green room. And then we moved and then I had to move it to the other room. Obviously, in the future, we would like to not do that. So but a lot of this was experimenting. The only way to really know what works and doesn't work is to do it, in my opinion. You can think about these things a lot, but there's just a certain amount of effort. So we hope to do a lot more of this, and we're hoping that we're hoping that we were good partners with Sweetwater. They were incredible for us, and so hopefully they'll let us come and play more often, because I think we could get really good at it with a little more practice, and it might be a really fun testing ground for office hours. so we'll see if we can maintain that. Yeah, and Zach Hunt. Max Hunt is I was trying to think of Max's last name and it just popped into my head. Go ahead, Jesse.
Two quick questions. What were the cameras that we saw with the SLR cameras? What was your set there, and how did you feel about the stereo separation on the iPhone at that distance from the stage?
Yeah, it's So these were two of them were Michael's cameras, and one of them was mine. So there were two FX30s and one FX6. So the FX30s were shooting the wider. One was fixed on Brian, the lead singer, Brian Vander Ark, who's been on our show. And then The other one was a wider shot of the band. And then Michael was roaming with his FX6 and a longer lens to capture what he wants to. So that's what we use there. And as far as the camera goes, it was good. When I put it on, it was good. It's not incredible at that level, but the problem is you can't fit the band in. So you can't get any closer. If you get any closer, you start cutting the band off. So we couldn't get much closer. I would have loved to go down another couple feet, but we don't. I kind of think of worst case scenario. At the height it was at, with people in the room, a basketball player might be able to hit it. But if I got much lower than that, a lot of people could hit it. And I was just afraid it would become, I've had a lot of worst case scenarios. So I think about those things. I mean, it was a pretty easygoing crowd. Jerry Harrison was there. He was their producer for the, so I looked over, I was at the bar getting my kids some root beer and looked over, and there's Jerry Harrison watching the show. So anyway, so he lives in Mill Valley. So I'm sure he just was not a long commute. So anyway.
Let's see. Courtney had a question.
I basically had a similar question to what Jesse was saying. At that distance, I was wondering about how much depth you would actually see in the spatial video.
It's still dramatic. I mean, I will tell you, it's dramatically better and more interesting than the 2D version. It is it's definitely a big jump forward, but it's not as good as as I've done a lot of 3D. The interaxial distance, I'm used to seeing a little more depth at that distance, because the standard interaxial distance would be about 4 times more than three to four times more than what's in the camera, in the iPhone.
And what was that other camera that you had that had further apart cameras on it? I can't remember the name of it. It was the size of a phone. Yeah, did that ever work out? Or
it's got a really short battery life. So if I'm moving a lot, I meant to pull it out because I had it. Here's the worst part is I think I had it in the bag. It's just that when you're doing a production with a couple people, I was very fortunate that everyone was very, very useful. We were all moving very fast, but I didn't have quite enough runway. So we got the show done on time and everything else, and we got it done. We did everything that we thought we would do, but I didn't have time to fiddle with extras. So I had extra things that I wanted to do. I wanted to get a couple extra captures, a couple extra things, pull that camera out and shoot it. And those were all in my head to do. And it just wasn't, I'm very quick to clip things off that I choose. Anything that's not streaming, I stop doing. Like if I'm out of time. And so I'll focus on the stream very, very quickly. Is
there any way to switch that stream between two stereo cameras or not?
So one of the things that we've talked about is you potentially could stream multiple cameras to Apple Vision Pro, and you could just open up different windows, just watch them, watch the windows and move. The user could move them around if they want to. There's not any way to do it right now because the phone compresses it into the stereo. So it's not outputting stereo out of the HDMI.
It just does a one eye and a delta for the other eye.
Yeah, exactly. So there's not really any way for it to go out of the currently.
In a switchable format. Yeah.
In a switchable format.
Switchable stream. Yeah.
But
switchable.
If someone like Mimo Live, Oliver, if Mimo Live could read and manage MVHEVC, take it in as well as cut it and put it out, you could theoretically do that. Yeah. But you would probably almost never be able to do it in hardware. This is a place where software switchers could theoretically pass hardware switchers in the sense that they could do things that you couldn't do in a hardware switcher.
I believe our next question is on the same topic. So, Alexander.
Next one is from Alex 40 Golner in London, UK. Alex, thinking about last night's spatial video stream of the Verve Pipe concert, what was the biggest surprise you had putting on the show?
Sorry, I didn't put my hand up. I think that the biggest surprise was actually how well it worked. I think I had a very low expectation. I kept on telling everyone it's going to experiment. It's an experiment. It's an experiment. like I don't know if the audio will work. Because again, we had changed our pipeline. And so we were getting audio from just the board. We were doing a bunch of things. There was a bunch of things that I was very happy with the venue. I was not as thrilled with the amount of time I had to make the shift. And I kept on going, while I was doing it during the day, I was like, if I just done 2 or 3 shows here already, this would be a lot simpler. There's a lot of figuring things out that you do on the very first time you work at a venue. So I was I was a little stressed that it wasn't, like I was mostly stressed that, am I going to get audio? Like that was the big thing for me was, will the audio work? I want to really, and the audio did work. I was surprised at how compelling, and I only saw little bits of it, but how compelling I thought the interviews were. So the close-up interviews with the band, I think were very compelling. We did back up a little bit because at first we were just going to do it with Brian, and then Brian wanted to do it with a couple of the bandmates, which I think turned out great. It was great banter. It was. I think his sense of that was great. It did force us to pull the camera back a little bit, but I still think that the stereo effect worked very, very well, especially in that close quarters. So I think for those interviews, for intimate little solos with one artist or a couple artists, I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. So anyway, I thought that was I think it worked better than I expected in those areas. So I think that we did. Low light is a little hard because there's some computational photography being done with the left eye, I believe. And so you can feel it a little bit when you get into low light situations. But overall, I also think from the reports of what we saw from folks that a lot of people really enjoyed it on the Vision Pro. It was good. It was a good start, for what we're doing, and obviously we're going to do a lot more of it now.
Courtney, you had a thought?
Yeah, another question on that setup in the green room. I watched that as a plebeian. I wasn't watching it in stereo, but mono. And I would notice you didn't show in the behind the scenes what they were reading the questions off of, because the band read the questions coming out of Mokana, which was interesting. You must have had some kind of monitor there for them.
Yeah, it was a little bit janky because I don't use monitor stands very often. Like I have them on arms all the time, and we pack them very quickly with stands. I was like, I got to make sure I have stands. I forgot to put the screws in. So so it was one of those things. Like I opened up, we went through the monitor boxes, and there was no screws to put the things on. So I didn't show you the photo because it was a little embarrassing. But this is what happened here. So this is
on a chair. Okay,
it's on
There's your real production right there.
Yeah. They were like, we were trying to figure this out, and we were like, just get a chair. There's a chair over there. Grab that chair. Put it in. I mean, we were ready to stream about 10 minutes before we streamed. Like it was so much work of getting all the bits and pieces and everything else. And if Michael Coleman, who does a ton of interview stuff, if he wasn't there to set up all those other cameras, it would have just been the Apple Vision Pro, because I just wasn't ready. I just said, you go do that, and he did it in like 30 minutes. I was like, it'll take him a couple hours to get it all ready to go. He comes back 30 minutes later. Okay, we're all set up. So he's used to fast landings, and what we did is we activated again a front end Commenda is what we call it for that version, but we activated
kind of like a prompter view, then kind of what we would see as a prompter view or something.
And it's actually another window that I have access to for everything we do in Mokana, and I can, it's a standard prompter view. It'll take anything that's in the host view will show up there, and so you have that. I can make the stuff bigger. I can flip it in the software. You'd be happy with us. You don't need the hardware for us to flip the text. So and it just gives us control of those things. Yeah.
And the sound sounded pretty good. Were the two guitars going into DI boxes? Because I didn't see any amps in the room when they played the little couple of pieces.
Yeah, I believe that the acoustic guitar was going into a DI box, but we were miking an amp behind them for the bass.
Oh, there was
for the other guitar.
For the lead guitar. Yeah.
Yeah, the lead guitar was a Fender was going at. There was an amp that was sitting behind them that we mic'd, and then we took a DI from Brian's guitar. And then we had the three vocals.
The three SM58s for the vocals. Yeah, it sounded great. I enjoyed it.
Someone I think mentioned it. Like, this sounds better than most acoustic stuff. And there's no processing because it's just going through but again, thanks to Michael who got that all. I mean, I got it set up so that the routing was correct, but then he sat there and kind of tuned everything as he worked. So,
next question. Thank you, Alex, for the rundown.
Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York is asking, if anyone has X32 Edit handy, could you show how to get a multitrack recording out via the USB to a software like Reaper?
Alexander Knight.
I apologize, Zach. I don't have X32 Edit handy here, but I seem to recall with the USB card installed, I don't think you need to really do any configuration out of the box. The tracks will, I believe all the channels just show up. Now, I know the X32, you can go into the routing if you do want to specify like where the signal tap is. Is it pre-fader? Is it post-fader? Pre-EQ, post-EQ? So there are settings there, but you should be able to just open up a session. As long as the X32 is selected there as your interface, you should be able to populate all the tracks with the discrete channels in there.
Next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. On the Sony ZV-E10 II, what are the advantages of using RTMP/RTMPS, YouTube, Facebook, etc., versus SRT, and what are the uses of each streaming destination setting?
Ooh, big question. Alex, you want to handle at least part of it or go through every one of them?
Yeah, well, I can say that generally RTMP, it's just because it's more available. SRT is going to be more reliable than RTMP, so that's going to be the advantage of SRT. And so I think that is the, I think that's the advantage between the two. What I will say is that I would never use a camera for this. Like, just never. Like, I would never, ever, never. I see, I'm saying this, I'm going to eat crow somewhere because I'm going to be like, and then I encode it from the camera. But cameras, you're talking about tiny little, very inexpensive chips producing something, just because something goes out RTMP. I made a mistake one time having a conversation with someone who was bringing in these big Grass Valley cameras, and they were saying, well, we can't really intercut your EX1. And I was like, well, they're both 1080p. This is early, obviously, for me, a long time ago. I was like, they both do 1080p. And they're like, okay, buddy. They made a decision that I didn't know what I was talking about. And they were true. It was true. I didn't know what I was talking about. So, just because something can do RTMP at 1080p or RTMP or whatever, doesn't mean that all RTMP is just the same. It's not like Oppo ProRes or that kind of thing. There's a huge wide range of what an H.264 compression or H.265 compression is going to look like going into those things. And having a cheap camera do this, I wouldn't necessarily consider any of these as something that would be something that I would consider viable for most projects. But I will say, if you're comparing the two of those, the SRT is going to be more reliable than the RTMP in most situations.
Next question.
Robert Linkram in Belmont Shore, California is asking, I have a favorite Vinten Tripod that appears to use a non-standard rosette teeth count. How can I adapt my Vintnen Rosette to a more standard rosette? This is so I can mount a magic arm. Vintner is not helpful with this.
Yeah, probably Vinten again there. But Alex, what do you think?
Not easily. I think that that's going to be a difficult move, because I think what you're talking about is going from the Vinten Rosette to Airy is the most common one that's out there, and I don't know of anything that would let you easily do that. You probably have to put some kind of cheese plate or some kind of little converter that did both of those things, and I don't know of any. I don't know how. I wish I had a good answer for you, but I don't know of one outside of machining something.
Courtney may have a thought. Courtney?
Yeah, you could 3D print one if you knew the number of teeth in the rosette. I've made rosettes for all of my monitor mounts 3D printed. The other thing is just get a Mayford clamp and clamp that magic arm onto either the existing panhandle or that is on the other rosette that comes with it, or onto one of the legs if you don't want it to move with the head. If you want it to be static, use the Mayford clamp and then attach the magic arm to the Mayford.
There you go. Hopefully those things will help. Second hour today, we're going to be talking about mounting stuff, so stick around for that. That'll definitely be worthwhile. For the rest of the week, remember, right after the show today, Isadora, our Isadora weekly talk, an hour after the show ends here. And then after that, we move into Mimo Live Lab with Oliver Breidenbach. That happens at 11 a.m. Pacific. The first piece that I mentioned with Isadora is at 10 o'clock Pacific time. Friday, tomorrow, we are doing Story Hour. Our own Courtney Gooden is going to talk with CJ about a lot of topics from his career. It's kind of a chat about somebody who's been in the production industry forever and holds that Emmy over his shoulder for digital teleprompting in the age. These are you'll learn a lot if you sneak in and watch the show tomorrow. Saturday, always our hour of open question and answer, particularly about using things like the VisVector backend that we're kind of moving toward. And Sunday is our introspection day. It is a discussion, sort of a behind-the-scenes discussion. Both Saturday and Sunday, Sunday specifically, you can ask questions about how Office Hours runs on the back end, things about what we do, and it's a little more casual and a little more philosophical. So if you want to do less tech stuff and more, where's the industry going, what it's happening in technology and things like that, particularly the speculative stuff, because we don't record that or put it out over the air except for the live show. So that's your place for that. We'll be right back.